6-speed. Woo, baby. Ladies and gentlemen, special treat today. We're comparing this 2018 Porsche 718 Cayman GTS against that Lotus Evora GT. They released the 718 Cayman in 2017, getting rid of the beautiful naturally aspirated 6-cylinder for the turbo 4-cylinder, which has been controversial to say the least. Power is up though, 360 horsepower, 317 pound-feet of torque. With that said, let's see how this bad boy drives. Now, Porsche did a great job keeping the weight down. This car weighs around 3,040 pounds. Steering is, for an EPS, very, very impressive. You get a lot of feedback, extremely accurate, good weighting, a little bit lighter than I would have expected, if I'm being honest. And the actual ratio of the rack, the speed of it, is very appropriate. The car, the front end, doesn't feel too darty. It's closer to telepathic, if anything. I mean, the Cayman is just such a beautifully balanced car. Oh my God, beautiful pedal placement. Heel toe is a cinch. Great throttle response, even from a turbocharged 4-cylinder. There is a little bit of lag at the lower revs. But it builds in a pretty linear way as you get up higher on the rev range, which is not really typical for a turbo. So Porsche did a great job tuning this engine. McPherson strut front suspension, but still not really getting much understeer. Again, Porsche does a great job. I've driven the GTS 4.0 as well at the Porsche Experience Center, and I was very impressed by, even with throttle input, it was quite resilient to understeer mid-corner. Oh yeah. This is a great EPS, one of the best EPS, you know, in the Cayman, the GTS, and the GT4. It's just so good. There are limitations compared to a hydraulic rack, of course, but this is just about as good as an EPS can get. Let's do a little acceleration test. Plenty of pickup. Really good brakes, very linear. Very easy to modulate, not too grabby. All the inputs feel very cohesive. You're looking at the steering, the transmission, the brakes, the throttle response, the clutch weight. I love the clutch engagement on Porsches too, very easy to feel. But if I have to nitpick, I will say that the transmission is not the strong suit. And I don't mean just the gearing, and everyone hears about how the gearing is a little bit too long on Caymans. And while I agree with that, the thing that bothers me more is the lateral slop here. There's so much lateral movement. Actually entering into gear, it is quite positive, but I don't like that lateral slop. It's just a bit excessive. Throws are a little bit longer than I would like to. But again, nitpicking here. Yeah, these cars are just so easy to control. That mid-engine balance, despite what people would say, 50-50 weight distribution is not ideal. You actually want a slight bias to the rear. And the Cayman just gets it so good. So good. Seating position in Porsches is always close to ideal. In the older generations, I didn't like the pedal placement, but in these newer generations, they have the pedal placement on lock. Now, of course, the elephant in the room, the engine sound. It does not sound like a Subaru, because the Subarus have the, while they also do have a Boxer 4 that's often turbocharged, they have unequal length headers, which gives it that Subi rumble. You don't get the Subi rumble here. It is raspy, it is aggressive, but it's not nearly as musical or as beautiful as that naturally aspirated flat 6 from the 981 generation, or also in the GT4s. Man, the feedback in the steering, I'm impressed. Very good EPS. It's soaking up the bumps pretty well. Bumps aren't too harsh. Again, I'm having PASM off right now. With the adaptive dampers engaged, it's a little bit too bumpy. It's overall very refined and driver-focused experience. There's a reason why Porsche tend to dominate the market in this segment. This car goes for about $94,000 as spec'd. Now at that price, I would personally want the naturally aspirated 6-cylinder, but if you don't mind the lack of musicality to the engine note, this is a pretty well-balanced car. It's got that Porsche fit and finish. The interior quality is on point. Build quality is not lacking in any way. Again, the transmission, I'm not sure why there's so much lateral slop. It does seem a bit out of character for a car like this when everything else is so buttoned down. Why does this slip through the crack? I know the GT4 has a much tighter gear selector. And the one other critique I would have of this car is that it's almost too good, it's almost too neutral, where if you're a power oversteer aficionado like I am, it can almost be a little bit bland, a little bit vanilla. And while you can definitely induce some oversteer, especially on the track, it's not as playful on the street compared to some other cars in a similar price range. And with this car setting a very high bar, let's see how it compares to the Evora GT. And we are now in the 2020 Evora GT Automatic. The car is powered by a Camry V6 that has an Edelbrock supercharger, pushing out 416 horsepower and 317 pound-feet of torque. You can think of this as the mid-cycle refresh to the 400 and 410 that came out in 2017. The chassis and the car is more or less the same, but they changed the aero and the styling on the front and the rear bumpers just a little bit. Now this car is bone stock. It comes with the Bilstein dampers, as all GTs do in the USA, and the GTs are only for the USA. Also has AP racing brakes, as do all Lotuses. This car is actually much more expensive than that Cayman 718 GTS. That goes for around $94,000. This is $109,000. And with that being said, let's see how it drives. Oh, I love that we have a manual handbrake, old-fashioned. You know, the seating position in this car is a little bit higher than I would like, even at the lowest position. And the headrest, not built for tall people. It kind of hitting my traps a little bit. Buddy. Now in the automatic, we have a traditional torque converter 6-speed. Woo, baby! We're in race mode right now, which helps with throttle response and reduces the traction and stability management. Less intrusive. Steering in these Lotuses, oh my god, hydraulic rack is sublime. Lotus makes the best steering racks in the game, in the industry, by far, hands down. So much feedback, so much precision, perfect weighting. Oh yeah, I can feel every little nook and cranny through the steering wheel. Double wishbone suspension in all 4 corners. Helps gives me that negative camber as the front wheels load up. Suspension tuning on this car is actually quite good. The damping it feels like very high quality dampers because I'm able to feel what I want to feel, but nothing is harsh. Even on this Mines road, which is not the smoothest surface by any means. Now I'm glad that the paddles are at least on the steering wheel. They feel high quality, but of course I would prefer this car in a manual transmission. Now when you're driving the car slower, the automatic transmission is quite slow and a little bit frustrating, but I noticed as you open it up, as you push it a little bit, the shifts are faster. And they actually, it's no longer a sore spot. It kind of gets out of the way for you. Compared to the Porsche, the build quality I mean, you hear so many more squeaks and rattles, even though this car only has 7,000 miles on it. The attention to detail on little things, like having this reflective surface right here above the instrument cluster, it's very reflective, so on the way up, with the sun shining, it was blinding me. Small little things like that makes this feel like a, I mean, it shows that Lotus is a much smaller car manufacturer than Porsche. Oh yeah, the steering, baby, the steering! Who would have thought that a Camry V6 could sound this good? What a beautiful sounding V6. Some people don't like the supercharger whine. I don't mind it at all. Now the brakes, I feel like the first initial, let's say, centimeter of travel doesn't have much bite to it. After that, it's easy to modulate. Yeah, this is soaking up these bumps fantastically. Now it's easy to modulate when you get on the brakes, but that initial bite is a little bit lacking, a little bit, took me a couple brakes to get used to. Because initially it doesn't inspire that much confidence. But after that, very firm. Yeah, this is just such a driver's car. This is raw. This is what you want on your weekend cruiser. This is not the car that you want a daily. The Porsche Cayman, that's your daily sports car, the one that you can take on the weekends and enjoy, but also go to and from work in. This is more raw. Oh, this beautiful, delicious downshifts, baby! Suspension is really doing a good job in handling the, you know, when I was driving the Amira in Vegas, I was getting some understeer on throttle input, but I'm not getting any of that right now. I wish the seats had a little bit more lateral bolstering. I'm sliding around ever so slightly. I'm 6'1", 175 pounds, a little bit on the skinnier side. Oh, yes. I have driven an Evora GT stick shift as well in the past, but I had 3 passengers. Yeah, believe it or not, this is a 4-seater. I had the salesman in the passenger seat, his son behind him, and my ex-girlfriend, well, girlfriend of the time, who was also pretty small, sitting behind me. So it's nice to actually drive this car without the added weight, because it is quite nimble. Now, it is 3157, a little bit heavier than a Porsche Cayman, which is around 100, 120 pounds lighter. By Lotus standards, this is heavy. By modern standards, compared to anything else, this is a very lightweight, nimble car. God, the steering is so good. It's perfect. The weighting, the accuracy, the speed, the ratio. Remember the 4 elements of steering: the feedback, the accuracy, lateral slop, and weighting. And the speed, of course. God, it's just so good. And see how this does from a dig. Beautiful exhaust note. All right. The power is very adequate. It's not a car that's going to rip your face off with acceleration, but it also doesn't make you feel like it's lacking in power at all. Now, compared to the 718 Cayman GTS, a much more raw experience. The steering is alive with feedback. There are more creaks and rattles. The NVH, it's a little bit harsher overall, but it's a more rewarding car to drive too. The Porsche is trying to be a comfortable sports car to a lot of people, something that they can even daily and enjoy regularly, whereas the Lotus is going for the occasion. The Lotus is going for the theater, the excitement, the raw, visceral nature of driving. It's one of those cars that rewards you the more you push it. And while I would definitely suggest getting this in a 6-speed manual to really get the full experience out of it, even though Lotus transmissions are not the, at least in this generation of vehicle, are not the strongest suit, this is just such a driver-centric, emotional place to be. And of course, in the best way possible. Even though this car is more expensive than the Porsche Cayman, you can see where that money went to, right? You're getting a little bit more of a boutique experience. The build quality, the rattles, the interior, I mean, the Alpine head unit, which feels very aftermarket. You're not getting the fit and finish and the polish of a Porsche, but you are instead getting a much more raw and engaging driver experience. But let me know what you guys think. What would you choose? Either the Evora GT or the 718 Cayman GTS? Leave a comment down below. Much love, my friends, and I'll see you guys in that next one.